But the retinoblastoma is very exciting because we worked with an expert at the Bascom Palmer. His name is Timothy Murray, and he's worldwide known for treating children with this horrible disease of the retina, where they get this disease in the eye, and if it's not treated correctly, they're blind, and if it's not, even then, it can kill them. So this is a terrible hereditary disease. Fortunately, there's only about 300 or so young children, but that's way too many, that suffer from this disease. So he came to my lab about 7 years ago and said to me, I know about 2DG and what you've done in killing hypoxic cells. I have patients that I can cure, but I have other patients that come in too late, and I think it's because they have too much hypoxia. Let's start on an experiment. And he has what we call a transgenic model, where he can actually change the genes in an animal, and now the animal gets the disease. So he has the disease, and that's done now for many different diseases, which is very interesting because it's a better way than to study a human cancer, put it in the back of a mouse, and expect to get the same results when you treat a patient in an example like that. But when the mouse actually gives rise to the cancer as we do normally, then you have a better way. I think it's a better model. Anyway, in this model, we were able to test 2DG in combination with the chemotherapy that they use in the children. And he was amazed and has told me right then when we got the result, this is probably the best thing to come along in retinoblastoma for 20 years. Now the results took about 2 or 3 years to do, so that's about 4 years ago. We still haven't gotten into clinical trial. And that's because, again, of all the different things you have to go through and, unfortunately, money. And so that's what we're trying to do now, and I'm not here for that. I'm here for PAPGOR, and I do want to say, and I forgot to say this, your organization is one of the few I know, because I'm learning more and more about fundraising. It's one of the few that really gives all the money, or almost all the money that you collect to the cause that you want. And what cause could be better than research for a disease, and a disease that kills 550,000 people a year in the United States alone. The remark was that they heard that some of the proteins that are specific to cancer are being targeted. And that's, again, the oncogenes. That's the targeted therapy now. Instead of using chemicals that just hit the dividing machinery of cells, the targeted therapy that's come about in the last 15 or 20 years is something that is more hopeful. However, when you knock one of those proteins out, which is not just a protein for cancer, it's also a normal protein, so you do have side effects. We don't get rid of the side effects. But unfortunately, because we don't have one oncogene in a tumor, it takes about 5 or 6 hits in a cell, luckily. If it took one hit, one mutation, we all wouldn't be here. But it takes 5 or 6 in the same cell to get that cell to go to cancer. But unfortunately, so you block one protein, but then there are others, redundancy in the pathways, so that's why we haven't been that successful. But certainly, it's out there, and there are some drugs like Tarceva, that Gleevec, that have some good efficacy. There's a Nobel, well, I gave it away. Dr. Watson, does anybody remember Watson from, not Sherlock Holmes? Yeah. See, the joke is there. Watson and Crick, right? He was recently interviewed in the New York Times and gave the article and said exactly what I just said now. Because of redundancy in the oncogenes, we haven't completely solved the problem. However, he said it, I didn't say it. I've been saying this for years. Obviously, he hasn't been listening, but he can't listen to me because he's listening to many other things. He's not just focused on cancer. But he said what we've been doing. We should be studying glucose metabolism because he learned that those oncogenes are driving glucose metabolism. That's coming from Watson. Now, just because he's a Nobel Prize winner doesn't mean everybody's going to follow him, but it's not bad to have a Nobel Prize winner telling you you're doing the right thing. So I'll leave you with this one. What is the budget? Does anybody know the budget for defense in this country? I looked it up. How much? I learned it was $713 billion, close, $713 billion. What is the budget from the National Institutes of Health for Cancer, NCI, the National Cancer Institute? How much is that budget? $713 billion for defense. And nowadays, when we had the Cold War, we could go and have our spies in Russia and figure out how much is the Russian government spending on making missiles and making armaments, and we'll outspend them 3 times. We'll stay ahead of them. But now with that changed, and now with the vagueness of terrorism, who knows what price we should be paying? So we're up to $713 billion for deaths that we saw horribly 9/11. We saw the deaths there, and occasionally we see deaths. But what do we know about cancer? 550,000 people dying of cancer, and we're spending $5 billion compared to 713. I'm stopping with that. Good enough.